I got a story for y'all. I literally just remembered it. It's a short story, for real this time. It's a real short story. Me and my girlfriend went out of town. We went to Tennessee. I asked my best friend to come and watch the house and feed my turtle. We were only gone for like 2 days, maybe. He came here one night and took a shower in the opposite room. He said when he got out of the shower, he slipped, he fell, hit his head. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw an old lady looking at him like this. He said he jumped up, he closed his eyes. He was like, whoa, what the fuck? He said he kept his eyes closed the whole way out of the room. He came out the room. He said, I'm sorry. And he got dressed and he left the house. And he did not come back to my house until I came back into town. And then he had to come and tell me, like, what happened. And I was like, oh, that was my girlfriend's grandmother. And you don't announce yourself before you come in here. So she didn't know who you was. And she had to show herself to you. That was just a little experience. It was funny.
I was home by myself one night hanging out with my chameleon. He hangs out on his tree in front of the window while I'm awake, and at night when the lights are on inside, you can see your reflection on the window. I was facing the window watching my chameleon, and he was watching me when I saw a dark figure in the reflection of the window move across the room. I know my chameleon saw it too because he flinched and both of his eyes were locked on whatever was behind me. I looked around me and nothing was there. The fact that the chameleon saw it too and like flinched, I would have been out of there with the chameleon. This happens last week. I was sleeping in bed and suddenly woke up like something had made me jump. I saw the outline of a person, too dark to see anything else, standing next to my bed, and I assumed it was my boyfriend. I laughed and said, oh my god, you scared me. And he got into my bed. I reached out my arms to hug him and felt nothing. I felt nothing. No thank you, no thanks, no, I don't ever want to experience this. However, I have experienced twice where I wake up and I can hear my husband snoring next to me, so I'm getting up quietly, only to find out that he was never in bed. He's awake in the living room and I clear as day heard him snoring. Has anything like that happened to you guys?
Let's talk about something spooky. If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and today I'm going to be talking about kind of a follow-up to the whole mimic thing. If you don't know what I'm talking about, one of my very first viral videos was about a mimic spirit that sounded like my boyfriend, and I have only heard it once. My boyfriend's dad only heard it once. The dog only heard it once from my knowledge, and his sister only heard it once, and that was it. So we haven't heard it in a long time. However, I do have a question. I'm not completely sure if mimic spirits can manifest themselves into different people, or if it's just one voice, so maybe someone can clue me in. But my mom found out about my TikTok pretty recently, and she saw my mimic story because her coworker is actually a follower, and the way she asked me if the mimic can sound like me, and I said yes. Why do you ask that? My blood ran cold when she said, because I've been hearing your voice. Just for some context, I went on a camping trip 3 weeks ago with my boyfriend and his friends. And I didn't bother waking up my mom when I left because it was 10 a.m. I don't bother my mom when she's sleeping. But she says when she woke up from her nap, she was just in her room and she heard me go, Mom. She didn't respond the first time. And then I said it again, Mom. And just to clarify, I do leave my door open. So when she walked out of the room, and that's how you know I'm not home, is if my door is open. She walked to my room and my bed is empty, fully made, and she tried texting me and I didn't have service at the time. So when we were driving back into town, I got all of these texts saying, when did you guys leave? Like, what time did you guys leave? And when I got home and I told her, face drained with color, and I didn't know why until she found my TikTok. But I don't know. That's gonna do it for me though. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
Spooky story time. A follower named Mark said that he saw my video about my personal experience at the Zach Bagans Haunted Museum and he wanted to share his own experience. Mark says that he's visited the Zach Bagans Haunted Museum at least 7 times and he agrees that it is a very dark, very eerie place to visit. He says that he was an instant believer the very first time that he visited the Zach Bagans Haunted Museum. He was blown away by the energy, by what he saw, by what he heard. He was like, there's no way that this is fake. He says that when he immediately got home, he felt like this very high energy feeling and he wanted to talk to his cousin about his experience. So he FaceTimes her and he knows that his phone was almost fully charged 100%. So he's on FaceTime with his cousin, and during their conversation of him explaining about the Zeg Bagans Haunted Museum experience, she's like, I literally just saw a dark shadow pass right behind you. Moments later, his phone shuts off, like it completely dies. And he's freaking out because he's already freaked out because of the actual haunted museum, but he's freaking out because his phone was fully charged. Like, how did it die? He says that he's woken up to apparitions like hovering over him or walking towards him. And he says that none of this had ever happened until he went to the Zeg Bagans Haunted Museum. There is a very haunted doll inside that museum called Peggy. You are given the option to go in, see her, but they do warn you and they tell you that you have to say hello and you have to say goodbye. You have to. So Mark says that in that room, one of the times that he went in there, told her hello, was very respectful, and she literally says it through the voice box, get out. And he does. He pretty much just wants me to help him relay this message and to warn people, if you go to the Zeg Bagans Haunted Museum, just please be respectful. Be respectful of the energy, of the place, of the items, because this is a very powerful place. Whether you believe it or not, just know what you're getting yourself into. But thank you so much to Mark for sharing his own experience at the Zeg Bagans Haunted Museum. If you guys have any spooky stories that you'd like for me to share, please send them via DM or email, and I'd love to read them. And I will see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye!
If you think nothing will truly disturb you or keep you up at night, I dare you to look up how many people have gone missing from Nome, Alaska. Because from 1960 to 2004 alone, 24 people disappeared from this remote, isolated town, and it is terrifying. That's what happened to Joseph Balderas and Florence Okpialuk, who disappeared within 4 years of each other in Nome. Residents in the town are on edge because of these mysterious disappearances that just keep happening, and the majority of them are still unsolved, so let's talk about it. This disturbing reality was brought to my awareness after listening to the Up and Vanish podcast, where the host, Hayne Lindsay, actually traveled to Nome to investigate the disappearances of Joseph and Florence. Their new season sheds light on how both of them seemingly vanished into thin air. Let's start with Joseph. Joseph moved to Nome in 2014 and quickly fell in love with the little town. He was a law clerk with Nome's 2nd District Court. He was described as incredibly smart, kind, and was good at pretty much everything he did. He was about to move to Juneau with his fiancée, and overall life just seemed really great for them. That is until June of 2016. Joseph was last seen on June 24th, 2016, but he very mysteriously disappeared after this, and what followed has never been explained. 3 days came and went with no sign of Joseph. His fiancée wasn't able to get a hold of him, and he no-called, no-showed work, which was extremely out of character for him. So one of his colleagues reported him missing, and a massive search was launched. That very same day, police found his abandoned truck at mile 44 of the Nome Council Highway. It was unlocked, and inside was his backpack that contained fishing supplies, waders, and boots, but Joseph was nowhere to be found. Police assumed that he was just in the area hiking or running, but it would soon be clear that something horrible happened to him. Police, along with search and rescue and the U.S. Coast Guard, scoured the area for Joseph, but found nothing, and it was like he vanished into thin air. The search for Joseph was called off after just 9 days after finding no evidence of what happened to him. Police are not ruling out foul play, and there are some theories as to what could have happened, but to this day, Joseph and the truth remain missing. It didn't take long for tragedy to strike Nome again, because just 4 years later, another person would go missing under mysterious circumstances. Florence Okpialuk was 33 years old when she disappeared from Nome on August 31st, 2020. Florence was a native of Wales, Alaska, but had moved to Nome in 2013. Similar to Joseph, she was last seen leaving a tent on West Beach at around 4 p.m. that day, and after this, she vanished into thin air. A massive search for her was conducted as well, which involved Nome police, the FBI, and the U.S. Coast Guard, but the only thing ever found was Florence's shoes, socks, and jacket. And just like Joseph, to this day, Florence remains missing. So I heard about this disturbing mystery after listening to the podcast Up and Vanished. I don't know if any of you listen to this podcast, but the host, Payne Lindsay, is so incredibly talented. This isn't just a typical true crime podcast, because Payne and his team have spent years working together and traveling to different places like Nome to get on-the-ground coverage, which is pretty rare for a podcast. He is extremely hands-on, and his approach is boots-on-the-ground investigative journalism, which I love. His new season already has 2 parts that are up and ready to listen to, and I highly suggest you all go listen to this. It's insane what he's able to uncover by simply going to these places and investigating, especially since these cases have stalled. So he's really picking up where the police have left off, directly working with the victims' families to get justice for their loved ones. You can listen to Up and Vanished on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but I'm curious to know what you guys think is really happening in Nome, Alaska.
Spooky story time. A follower named Roy sent me this story and we're going to call it My Friend Javier. This is going to be a 2-part series, so stay tuned. Roy says that when he was about 13 years old, he was all into graffiti, just like everyone else around that time. One of his friends ends up asking him, hey, do you have any extra spray cans that I could use? And he says, yeah, actually, you can come pick them up from my house. Explains where he lives. His friend was a little confused, and there was a boy there named Javier who was listening, and he was like, hey, actually, I know where you live, and he kind of better explains it to the other friend. One day, Javier shows up at Roy's house, and he's like, hey, I kind of remembered where you lived, and I just thought I'd drop by. Do you want to hang out? Roy was like, what the heck? It was kind of weird, but he was like, I mean, you're already here, I guess. They end up hanging out, and they end up hanging out quite often, and Roy starts to notice that Javier is now coming over almost every single day. One day, Javier shows up at Roy's house with his mom, and she is bawling. She's crying, and she's explaining to them that they are about to lose their house and is asking if Javier can live with Roy for a little bit until she gets back on her feet. Again, Roy is like, okay, this is weird, but he felt bad. So he talked to his grandparents, and his grandparents were like, I mean, we can't let this little boy be in the street, so I guess. And as we all know, this is where things start to take a dark turn. Roy says that his sisters had already moved out, so he was kind of excited about having a friend there to just conversate with and hang out with. And the very first night, Javier slept in Roy's room. Roy slept on the bed and Javier slept on the floor. Roy says that his room was pitch black. He's asleep, and all of a sudden he wakes up and there is a bright light kind of like on his bedroom door. And as he's looking at it and kind of like waking up from his sleep, he sees an old man's face. And this man is looking him dead in the eyes with like this dread and like a heavy feeling. Roy jumps out of bed, freaking out. As Javier's waking up, the face is slowly like going away. And Roy's like, look at what I just saw. And Javier's like, you're tripping, like you're dreaming, like calm down. As time passes, weird things kind of start to happen a lot more often. Javier needed to use the restroom, and he tells Roy, hey, I really need to use the restroom. I saw someone walk into the restroom. Can you just knock on the door because like I've been holding it? And Roy's like, yeah. So he goes to the restroom, peeks in there. There's no one in there. So Roy tells Javier, hey, it's empty. Like you can use the restroom. Javier's like, period. As he's walking to the restroom, the door slams shut, and they're because Roy had just checked and there's no one in the restroom. Then Javier kind of starts to change. His personality starts to change. Roy says that he had gotten into this little argument with someone and they decided to handle it after school, kids being kids. And he tells Javier, hey, can you just like watch me from afar and make sure that his friends don't show up, because just to be safe. And Javier is like, yeah. So as Roy is waiting, that other guy, sure enough, comes up with 5 other guys, turns around and sees Javier looking at him, and Javier leaves. That day, Roy ends up getting jumped. Roy gets home, and Javier's at home just chilling, like nothing ever happened. Like a few weeks pass, and they're still not talking. Roy's still very upset at Javier. And one day, Roy's grandma tells him, hey, I really need to talk to you. She goes on to tell him that she had fallen asleep on the couch that night and that something very weird had happened. She wakes up and she was being touched inappropriately. She opens her eyes, she looks up, and it's Javier. Only his eyes are like black, pitch black. He runs, she chases him, but when she gets to the room, the door is closed. She didn't hear it open, she didn't hear it closed. She opens the door and both Javier and Roy are asleep. Something tells me that something's wrong with Javier. Something's going on. Go to part 2.
So while I'm getting ready to cook dinner really late at night, I want to tell you guys another little a mediumship story that I have. So recently I went out to my club, not my club, but I went out to the club with my best friend for his birthday, right? Whole gang, club, section, everything like that. We all partying, everybody's lit all night long, right? Now, if you know me and you've watched my videos and all of that, like, I am a medium. Born a medium, okay? I've been trying to work through it. I've been trying to figure out what the fuck's been going on in my life, and everybody's like, nah, babe, you're a medium. That's what it is. So I'm in the club, right? And I'm having fun. I'm having a good time. And then it's just like fog. Like I get this brain fog and I can't think anymore. And I'm like, okay. And I start feeling people that I can't see in the room. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's other people in here. It's other people in here. You get what I mean? I'm like, it's other people in here. They just not alive, you know. But they in here. I can see the shadows. I can see the forms of the people. I'm like, okay, cool. I know exactly where they at in the room. Like I can feel where they're at, right? So I'm sitting there, and it's like my best friend's grandmother, who just recently passed away, she popped up in there, and then she was just happy, she was excited, and I'm guessing it was because it was his birthday, so she was just like in a celebration type of mode. So when I seen her doing that in my mind's eye, I was looking for him so I could try to tell him what I was seeing, but I couldn't find him anywhere, right? And me and him have had conversations about his grandmother before. So the kicker is I'm standing there on the couch, and I can't even hear the music in the club no more. I'm just looking. But when I be looking at my brain, you know what I mean? So I'm looking into my mind's eye, and I'm looking, and I see this man, he's like 22, 23 years old. He got on a black t-shirt, he got on some like Dickies pants, and he's walking back and forth in the club, and it's like he just walking back and forth. He don't look confused enough. He's walking back and forth like he with somebody, he's taking care of somebody. That was the energy I was getting from him. He had like straight hair. He looked like he could have been like Spanish or something, right? So I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, okay, but who is this dude attached to? Who's this dude attached to? Because I can't think about nothing but him, right? And I'm picking up things about him, right? So this is what I started picking up. I see the dude, and then I'm like, okay, I'm feeling protective. And if you know mediums, or if you know about mediumship, you know it's about images, it's about clear audience, it's about sense, it's about different things that hit different senses and otherworldly senses as well. They kind of tell you what the fuck to interpret. So it's like I'm feeling protection. I'm seeing a little girl. I'm seeing another person, but the other person is like blurred out, right? So it's like protection over this little girl and another person. And then there was this motorcycle, this real tricked out motorcycle that I was seeing. And then there was a sense of immense love and eloping almost. And trying for a baby and being super in love and trying for a baby, right? So, and trying for a son. So I'm getting all this, mind you, I'm in the club. I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, okay, I don't know who this man's attached to. My girlfriend at the time, she wasn't standing over next to me, so I'm sitting there, I'm like, I can't. So one of my new homegirls, she was sitting right in front of me, and I, like, once I get all the way into that mode, I cannot stop until, like, I have to say something where I can't think no more. So I'm telling her, and I'm like, yeah, I'm seeing this dude walking around the club, and I don't know how else to tell you this, but he's just not alive. But I'm seeing this dude walking around the club, and he looks like he's about 22, 23 years old. I'm giving her the whole rundown, right? Give her the whole rundown. So I'm like, did you have an uncle, a brother, a cousin, or something like that passed away? And I swear to God, she said, I had an ex-boyfriend that passed away. He was 23. I said, was he real protective over you? She was like, yeah. And I was like, did he have like a little sister or something? She was like, yeah. And I was like, it seems like he's protective over you and just her. She was like, yeah, that would make sense because his mother died when he was little, so it was just literally me and his little sister in his life. And I was like, it's feeling like y'all were in love. Were y'all like really in love, like really good relationship, like super in love? She was like, yeah. And I was like, nah, like we're getting married, we're having a baby. She was like, yeah. And I was like, no, like trying for a baby, like actively trying for a baby. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, he was trying to have a son with you. And she was like, yeah. And then I was about to ask her, right before I got to say, does he have a fascination with motorcycles? She told me he died in a motorcycle accident a few years ago. And then he showed me a little baby boy that he was holding. And I said, y'all were trying for a son? She said, yeah. I said, he's holding your son until you choose to have a baby here. And she just looked at me and was like, I understand.
Have I got a weird story for you? This was sent in, and I'll be honest, I don't know if this is real or not. If this is real, someone needs to find the case, because what the hell? So there's a guy and his parents are currently renovating a new house they've bought. And while his parents are away, they call him and say, can you check on the home reno for us? Because the guy that's doing the contracting work, we haven't heard from him for a while and he's not returning our calls. So the guy, let's give him a name, let's call him Carl. He says, yeah, I'll go over there this afternoon. I'll have a look. I'll update you if anything needs updating. So after work, he goes to his parents' house and he pulls up and the house kind of looks empty. It's like somebody has been working there, but they've just got up and left. He lets himself into the house and he can hear music, but it sounds like the music's coming from downstairs. He's shouting, hello, hello. Then eventually somebody emerges. And this guy looks a bit shocked. He's like, what are you doing here? Who are you? And he says, my parents own the house. We haven't heard from the contractor in a while. Are you the lead contractor? And this guy's like, yeah, I'm Gus. I'm Gus, the lead contractor. He says, okay, why haven't you been answering the call to my parents? They just want an update on the house. And he's like, oh yeah, I was just working on the basement. Don't go down to the basement. Okay, I won't go down to the basement. He goes, look, I'll show you what I've been working on around the house. And he just like walks in from room to room being like, oh yes, there's a new sink in here. We've been decorating the upstairs room, and just like pointing out really obvious things that's been worked on. Then Gus says, I'm actually just going to go finish up painting the garage outside. Have a look around, but just don't go in the basement. You probably don't want to go in there. But Carl's curiosity gets the better of him. He goes down to the basement. And when he goes into that basement, it's the dungeon. Sex dungeon. Oh yeah. Toys, swings, red room, Mr. Grey's fantasy, let's just say. He is grossed out and he knows it's currently been working on. And he looks at everything really quickly and he notices like a doll on the floor and he's like, oh, I've got to get out of here. He quickly goes upstairs. He walks past Gus, who's painting the garage, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to call my parents. Everything looks good here. And he's like, did you go in the basement? And he goes, no, I didn't go in the basement. He's like, did you go in the basement? No, of course I didn't go in the basement. He gets in his car and he calls his parents. Hasn't left the grounds yet. He's in his car and he's calling his parents. So he's feeling really awkward. And, you know, he's on his phone to his parents and they're like, how's it going? Did you see Gus? And he's like, yeah, I saw Gus. He was just working on the basement. And they were silent. They didn't say anything. And they said, did you go in the basement? And Carl says, okay, I saw your basement, your weird, creepy basement. There's another pause. And his dad goes, is it finished yet? And Carl's like, yeah, it's finished. And he says, even the swing, is the swing there? Carl's like, gross. Yeah, there's a swing there. Yeah. He says, there's toys in there, there's dolls in there. It's just disgusting. I don't know anything about it. His dad says, dolls? Like, we don't have any dolls. And Carl says, yeah, there's a human-sized doll in there. Don't even tell me because I don't even want to know. His dad cuts him off again and says, we don't have any dolls and we haven't requested any dolls. And his mum says, what does the doll look like? He says, well, I didn't really pay attention because it was on the floor, but it was nude, mousy brown hair, a man. But he remembers that he saw like a wrist tattoo on him. He says it also had a tattoo on it. His mum says, did Gus show you around the house? And yeah, I met Gus. Gus was downstairs working on the basement. And that's who I saw. And she says, what does Gus look like? This guy is currently sat in his car looking at Gus. And he's like, you know, like 6'2", black hair, got a bit of a beard, slim build. And his mum says, that's not Gus. Go outside and ask him his name. Gus has mousy brown hair and a tattoo on his wrist. I don't think that's a doll. So he gets out the car, mum and dad still on the phone. And he walks over to the guy that introduced himself as Gus, or said he was Gus. And he says, this is probably a big misunderstanding, but what's your name? And the guy's standing there, and he says, my name's Gus. I told you that. So then Carl's on his phone to his mum and dad, and he goes, I'm speaking to Gus. And then his mum and dad say, well, Gus doesn't have dark hair. He's not slim build. And then Gus, with black hair standing in front of him, says, who are you on the phone to? Says, my mum and dad, the people that own the house. The guy runs away. Instantly, runs, gets in his car, vanishes. And you can guess how the story ended. That guy wasn't Gus. Gus was in the dungeon. Oh yeah, it got freaky down there for sure. Like I said, I don't know if that's true or not. Somebody emailed me this story. If it is true, I can't find any detail online about it. Have you heard it before? But wild, creepy enough for Friday 13th as well.
He was just 16 when he brutally unalived his entire family in the middle of the night with an axe. And now he's walking free. This true story is one of Minnesota's darkest tragedies. It's the story of David Braun. who, after decades behind bars, is being released early. I do want to give a quick trigger warning, like I do in a bunch of my videos, where I would tell you that this video involves themes of mental illness and the unaliving of minors, so if you think that is going to be harmful for your mental health, please don't watch this video, just skip it, and I will see you in my next one. I also want to give a disclaimer that I am just a girl, I'm not a lawyer. All of this information is free on the internet and accessible to everyone. That being said, if you know more about a case personally than I do, and if any of this information is incorrect, please just politely correct me in the comments. Don't be mean. Thank you. David grew up in an ordinary suburban family in Rochester, Minnesota. The family went to church, were well connected in their community, and friends and neighbors loved them. Their home was described as being filled with love and laughter. David was described as being smart, quiet, and polite. He had a clean-cut appearance, came from a middle-class home, and was the oldest of his siblings living at home at the time. Outwardly, there were no red flags. Let's talk about his family, the 4 victims in this case. The father, Bernard Braum, was a dedicated engineer and an active member of their church. Friends remembered him as being a proud father and as someone who worked on cars in his garage as a passion project. The mother, Paulette Braum, was known as a compulsive giver, someone who poured love, time, meals, and faith into others' lives. Her colleagues and neighbors remembered her warm presence, faithfulness in church programs, and having a generous spirit. The sister, Diane Braum, was an 8th grader at the time of her unaliving. She loved sewing, playing basketball, cheerleading, and playing the piano. She was known for her bright red hair and freckles and her smile. And lastly, Richard Braum, known as Ricky, was a cheerful 5th grader. He was known for being outdoorsy and energetic, and he loved riding his bike around the neighborhood with his cousins and friends. On February 18, 1988, in Rochester, Minnesota, 16-year-old David Braum brutally unalived his entire family in the middle of the night with an axe. Each family member was attacked at night while in their night clothes. The wounds were horrific. Officials found dozens of hits from the axe to each victim. He had used a 2 to 3 foot long axe that was later found in the basement of the home, covered in blood and with David's palm prints on it. The bodies were discovered that next day, and David was arrested at a post office payphone after someone had reported that they saw a teen who matched his description, and he was taken into custody calmly and quietly. During the investigation of this case, it had come to light that David had attempted to unalive himself twice in 1987 and was reportedly battling severe depression. At trial, the defense argued mental illness under Minnesota's insanity standard, but the jury decided to convict him on 4 counts of first-degree in October of 1989. He received 3 congruent and 1 consecutive life sentences, with the minimum required term being 52.5 years, before eligibility for parole at the age of 70. But it's only been 35 years and he's getting released because of a new Minnesota law that went into effect in 2023, which eliminates life sentences for crimes committed by juveniles. The law says that if you committed a crime under the age of 18, you're eligible for supervised release after just 15 years. And that's exactly what David Braum is getting. He is scheduled to start work release in July of 2025, which is literally right now as I am filming, editing, and posting this video. He will be living in a halfway house with GPS monitoring and full case management until his case is reviewed again in 2026 to decide if he can live fully free without any type of monitoring. Which is so terrifying. In my opinion, if you are capable of unaliving your entire family in the middle of the night with an axe at the age of 16, I don't think you should ever be able to walk free. I get that 16-year-old boys aren't fully developed in the brain, but if you're capable of a heinous act like that at that age, who knows what you'll do at the age of 40-something. Obviously, people have mixed feelings about this. Supporters say that David has shown genuine rehabilitation and has followed every single rule in prison. But others, including the sheriff and former county attorney, say that it doesn't matter how good he's been, this was a calculated, cold-blooded family annihilation that he committed at just 16 years old. Like I said earlier, I agree with that. And this case is part of a national growing trend where more than half of U.S. states have put this law into effect as well, that bans life sentences for juveniles, based on brain science and the belief in second chances, I guess. But here's the question, should crimes be unforgivable no matter how young you are? I would love to know your guys' thoughts on this crazy case in the comments. What are your thoughts about him walking free? Do you think he deserves to walk free? If you have other cases you want me to cover, please put them in the comments. I love getting to read your guys' comments. I post true crime videos just like this one every single day, so if you enjoy this type of content, follow so you don't miss my next video, and please stay safe out there. You never know what's right around the corner.
This 19-year-old girl was found in literal pieces scattered around her town, and all she did was say yes to a date. Her name was Sade Robinson. She was living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and just trying to navigate dating like any other teenager. And one day she matches with this demon, and I will not call him a man because men do not do this, but his name is Maxwell Anderson. And he tells Sade that he was around her age, but that was actually a lie because he was 33 years old. And after a few days of texting back and forth, Sade is getting no weird vibes from him. If anything, she's actually really starting to like this guy because he seems normal and sweet. So when he asked her out, she eagerly said yes, because why wouldn't she? She's about to go meet a cute guy her age for dinner. And on April 1st, surveillance footage shows Maxwell and Sade walking into this restaurant called the Twisted Fisherman, and they get seated. And from what everyone can see, things are going really well. She's smiling, chatting, acting very normal. Nothing about her body language suggests that she's worried or getting any bad vibes. In fact, it's going so well, they decided to go grab some drinks at this nearby bar called Duke's on Water, and they stay there for hours just talking and laughing like any normal first date would be. At around 9 p.m., security cameras catch them walking out the bar together, getting into her car. Not his, her car, and that becomes very important later, and then they head towards his apartment. Maxwell lived on the top floor of this duplex, and what happened in that apartment is truly horrifying, and it's something that we'll never fully know, but his phone tells us enough. This man had these disturbing photos of her. One of them was her laying on the couch face down and limp, and he's shirtless, and she is clearly unconscious or worse. And after he was done doing God knows what to her, he waited until the next morning on April 2nd to try and secretly get rid of her body. He dragged her body into her own car and drove all the way to Warnemont Park. Surveillance footage shows the car circling around the same area multiple times, almost as if he was looking for somewhere discreet to get rid of her. And at around 4 a.m., Sade's phone location shows them arriving to another park. Maxwell drags her body out of the car, and for the next 2 hours, he stays there. And that's when he off her leg and threw it somewhere he thought no one was ever going to be able to find. Afterwards, he put the rest of her inside the car and drives to another spot that was really far from the park. My guess is he was trying to make it really difficult to even locate her body if he ever got caught, because if there's no body, then there really isn't a crime. He then drives to multiple spots around town, and from what we know, it was about 4 locations, but it could have been more. And at each location, he just cuts more and more and more of her off until she is completely unrecognizable. At some point, he then drives the car to another sketchy location and sets it on fire. He just walks away thinking he just got away with what he's done, but what he didn't know was that a witness happened to be there and saw this car engulfed in flames. They immediately called the police, explaining that they just saw a man get out of a car, toss a lighter into the front seat, and walk away like he didn't just set a car on fire. They said he was wearing a gray hoodie and a tan backpack, and later that morning, guess who was seen wearing a gray hoodie and a tan backpack? Maxwell Anderson, walking off the bus just a few blocks from his house like it's any other Tuesday. Around the same time, one of Sade's friends starts feeling like something is off. She's contacting Sade, but she's not answering her phone. And even worse, her boss found it very off that she didn't show up for work, because it's not like her to just do a no-show. So now people are really starting to panic, but before anyone could even file a missing persons report, it's already too late, because at 5:30 that evening, someone is walking through Warnemont Park, the same park that Maxwell just took Sade to hours earlier. So they walk closer and closer, and that's when they see it. It's a human leg just floating on the shoreline. I can't imagine just walking and seeing a leg. Like, what do you even do? Police immediately arrive to the scene and send the leg in for DNA testing, and unfortunately, it belonged to Sade Robinson. And because Maxwell was the last person to be seen with her, he was the last person to be driving her car, and now that same car is on fire, police quickly make a prime suspect. And on April 4th, they spot him in his car, they pull him over, and just like that, he's in custody. Inside his car was Sade's clothes and the same tan backpack and hoodie that was reported earlier by the witness. But this was just the beginning, because remember what I told you, the details are disgusting. That same day, police issued a search warrant for his home, and when they go inside, it is extremely clear that something happened here. They found blood on the walls in one of the bedrooms and all along the stairway to the basement. And in that basement, they find a literal dungeon. There were chains, restraints, blackout coverings for the windows. Like, it was built to hide whatever went on down there. And next to it all was 51 knives. And not your typical cooking knives. No, these were military grade, combat style tactical blades. We're talking hunting knives, machetes, serrated edges, the kind that you don't buy unless you plan on gutting something. Lock him up right now. They even find gas tanks, like more than one, which means that the fire wasn't some last minute panic. He planned this to the T. But while investigators are still processing this scene, more pieces of Sade are being found all around the city. I'm gonna spare you the gory details because I don't know if you're eating, but just know that they were found in ways that I don't even think you want to imagine. Oh, and I think what really got me was that before I did research on this case, I watched a video of him crying to the judge saying that he didn't do it. And at first, I'm like, oh, judge, he didn't do it. Y'all got the wrong man. But that was before I knew who he was. And now I know he for sure did this, and even his lawyers know he did it. Because look at the lawyer's face when Maxwell tells the judge it wasn't him. And in June of 2025, he is found guilty of first-degree intentional homicide. So basically, this man will never walk free again. But let's be honest here, that'll truly never be enough because Sade should be here. I truly hope prison is the worst place for you, Maxwell. Thank you for sitting through this one with me. I know it was really hard to hear, but I love you guys. Mwah, group hug.
In my opinion, this is the scariest doppelganger story that I've ever heard, and of course it happened in Mexico, so let me translate it for you guys. So this guy says that one day he decided to hang out with his friends that he used to have in school. Mind you, they're all like between 34 and 35 years old now. Of course, it wasn't all of his friends because some of them are married, they moved to different towns, and some like they just lost touch, so he was hanging out with just a few that still lived in the same hometown that he did. And just an FYI, this wasn't like the first time that they had hung out after all these years. Like they had seen each other here and there, but you know, this is the first time that he had hung out with them after a while. They were hanging out, they were talking about school and what they did and teachers that they didn't like, and for that moment he had forgotten about all his like troubles in real life, and he was just taking in that nostalgia feeling that of being with his friends. However, that was until somebody brought up this party that happened in Cuernavaca. He said that he was just listening to what happened at that party because he hadn't been there, and they were all talking and saying things that they had done, but again, he didn't remember any of this because he couldn't go to that party. That's when he heard one of his friends make a comment to where he thought was a mistake, and his friend was like, remember when Moy showed up to the party all late? And the guy who's telling us the story, his name is Moy, and he was like, oh, he might have said my name in error because I wasn't at that party. And then his other friend was like, oh yeah, he showed up all late with no beer, no nothing, he just showed up by himself, he didn't even bring anything for us. He said that then everybody started laughing, and he was still like, what the fuck, like I'm not laughing because I didn't go to that party, they were all wrong, they're probably remembering it wrong. He also didn't correct them, like he didn't say, hey, you're talking about someone else because I wasn't there. He just like let it go because he just thought that they were saying the wrong name. After him not saying anything, a third friend joined in the conversation and was like, oh my gosh, yeah, he showed up in that beat up car that we could hear all the way down the road. Remember that car that we could hear from so far away we knew you were coming? Do you remember, Moy? That's when he didn't want to be a jerk, but he was like, actually, no, I don't remember. I wasn't there at that party, but it sounded like the party was really fun. After he says that, he said that everybody got really quiet, like almost like an awkward silence. But then they all started laughing because they thought that he was pranking them, that he was just joking around. And as they're laughing, he's like, no guys, like I really didn't go to that party, I wasn't even here. He even asked them like, when was the party, when did this happen, because I swear I didn't go with you guys to Cuernavaca. He even says that never in his life has he ever even been to Cuernavaca, so he was not at that party. He said that that's when everybody started talking. They're like, what do you mean you weren't there? It was at that bridge in 2008, like we all showed up in these cars, some of us couldn't drive, so we had to pick other people up, and that he got to the party really late when everybody was already like kind of drunk. They were all like, we even smoked some that day, and he joking around was like, oh, so you guys smoked some and that's why you hallucinated me being there, saying it as a joke. But they were all like, wait, no, like you were there. And they started to, it went from like joking to like, wait, what the fuck, like you were there. He said that they all tried to convince him that he was there. Like he would look at every single one of them and he could tell that they weren't lying. Like they almost felt like they were desperately trying to tell him you were there, for him to admit that he was there. But he was like, I was not there because I knew exactly where I was in that moment in time. He was in Veracruz because his grandmother was really bad and she did end up passing away, so they were grieving like his grandmother had passed away, and he was in Veracruz, completely different place than where they were. He started explaining to them like, my entire family had traveled to be there with my grandmother. This isn't something that I would forget so easily, you know, this isn't something that I would leave to come and party for. I promise you guys, I I wasn't at this party. He even explained to them, look, if you don't believe me, I have text messages, I have photos, I have proof that I was not where you guys were. I was in Veracruz. They did not believe him. They were still like, oh my god, like stop messing around. You were here. Like maybe you had smoked too much that day that you completely forgot about it. They told him maybe you got so drunk that you forgot about that night, but he explains that even when he does drink, he doesn't drink to the point where he forgets. He's never been that heavy drinker. He just decided to let it go. Like he stopped talking about the conversation because he's like, okay, maybe this is like an elaborate prank and they're really trying to make me believe that I was here. So hours have passed and it was the point where they were about to leave the party, and this girl that he had gone to school with named Irene actually came up to him. He remembers Irene because he had the biggest crush on her when they were in school. Every time he sees her, every time he's around her, he always has that like really great feeling of nostalgia. Even though they're just friends, like if nothing happened, he still feels like that little crush every time he sees her. But yeah, she went up to him right when he was about to leave. He said that he could tell that she had a really strange look in her face, and that when she came up to him, she told him, hey, you were here in Cuernavaca in 2008. And he tells her, I swear on anything that I was not here. I promise you, I'm not joking. It's not a prank. I was not here. She then tells him, it's because I will forever remember that night, Moy. Like it was a really special night for both of us. And at least it was for me, maybe not for you if you don't remember it. He said that when she said that, he just felt very strange. Like almost like if she was talking about maybe a different life that he had, but he was not there. After he tells her that, she opened her phone, goes into her Facebook, goes into these like really old albums, and she clicks on a picture, gives him her phone and says, look, you were here. He sees his friends, he sees that girl, and he is hugging that girl very tight. He says he's wearing like a light blue shirt, which he doesn't even know. And he says he's never owned like a light blue shirt, but he is there in that picture at that party that he does not remember being at. He's looking at the picture and he's asking her like, when did we take this picture? When did you upload it? And she's like, it's at the bridge that we partied at in Cuernavaca in 2008. You were there. She even showed him the date and time that it was posted, and it was the same time where he was in Veracruz and not partying with his friends. He couldn't say anything to her. He didn't know what to say, but the girl hugged him and said, I don't know why you're denying it, and I guess it's okay. It doesn't matter why you're denying what happened that night. Till this day, he hasn't talked to his friend about that. He hasn't talked to them about the picture. He said that he completely deleted his Facebook, and he just still feels very strange about the fact that with 100% he knew he wasn't there, but the fact that there was a picture of someone who maybe looks like him or his doppelganger being there, and he's terrified of bumping into that one day. He also feels very weird about that maybe other version of him who finally hooked up with the girl of his dreams, and how... What the fuck? Am I stressed or what? I'm gonna leave that in here. So you guys can see what the fuck. Anyway, he just feels like whatever happened that night doesn't belong to him. He didn't live it. He doesn't know what happened, but he knows that he wasn't there, and that he doesn't even know what he did with that girl, to where she's like, I can't believe you're denying this. I can't believe you're denying us. I'm just gonna end the story here and fix my eyes. Yeah, thank you.
However, coined the phrase, you can't make this stuff up, might have known the story of real-life boogeyman, Albert Fish. A slight, elderly man with grey hair, no one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely...
Hey, you've probably seen me a couple different times with a couple different stories under this stitch, and whether it's the mimic story or the Ouija board story, it's important that you go watch the Ouija board story, because this is a continuation of what happened a month after we played with the Ouija board we made. And before I start, I just need to address something really quickly, because I do have a lot of comments about Laura stories. We want more Laura. Yes, I will make more videos about the Laura experiences. I'll probably just jumble them into one because they are really freaky and I don't like talking about them. But I need y'all to understand that Laura and I have a very healthy boundary where we have a mutual understanding that I don't want whatever the hell is attached to her in my house anymore. And it's because of these experiences that I'm about to tell you. So, first story with my sister. She bursts in my room at 6 a.m. and essentially tells me, Elena, I had the weirdest dream last night. I have to talk to you about it because I'm scared. 2 red flags in this scenario. My sister getting up at 6 a.m. because she usually sleeps until noon. And number 2, her being scared enough to talk to me about an experience that she had. And I immediately sit her down and I'm like, yeah, we can talk about it. What's going on? And nothing weird has happened up until this point. This is like kind of the tip of the iceberg. And she says, I think I astral projected last night. And if you don't know what that is, just watch the Insidious movies. That's pretty much the whole premise of the movie. It's when you dream outside of your body, but you can see your body, if that makes sense. And as she's telling the story, I'm noticing that she is starting to shake from being scared, I can only assume. And she said, I just watched myself sleep. And I responded with like something along the lines of like, oh, that's cool. Like, what else happened? Because I could tell she was scared and I didn't want to scare her anymore. But she said, no, it wasn't cool because I wasn't the only one watching my body last night. And chills literally shot down my spine. And I said, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And she said, pretty much verbatim, a tall, thin man was watching me sleep. And she used her hand, and I'm going to do it here. She did this, like he was standing like this over her bed. And I said, well, did he do anything? Like, what, like, was that it? Y'all were just watching your body? And she said no. When he realized I was watching him watch my body, I woke up. And it's important to note that we have 2 dogs. One of them sleeps with my sister a lot. His name is Bubba. He's a very docile Boston Terrier. He does not bark unless he is, number one, provoked, like we tell him to speak, or he is scared. And he woke up short of foaming at the frickin' mouth. He was barking, growling, gristle up, teeth showing, growling at the corner of my sister's room right after she woke up. And that's when I told her about the Ouija board experience and what Laura and I had done, and we correlated the 2 together. We just grouped them together. The following week, my sister had left to go spend the night at her friend's house, and my parents were in Colorado, so I was home alone. And I am not one to walk in the dark ever. Like, I am one of those people that strategically turns on lights, so I always have light before I get to my destination. But this night I was feeling brave, and I was walking in the dark, and the only thing that was lighting up the basement was the door to my room. And it was because it was open, like the doorway of light. My dogs were already in my room, ready to go to sleep. And it's important to understand the layout of my basement. I should just make a video of like the layout of my basement so y'all can better understand this. But the bar area is flush with my door. So someone could be standing there like cooking things, and I could see them right before I go into my bedroom. And I'm about 2 or 3 steps in the dark. I'm feeling good because I'm like, hey, I walked in the dark today. 2 or 3 steps away, and I hear, hey. Just like that. Hey, like a little girl. Jumped into my room, shut the door behind me, barricaded myself in my door, or in my bedroom, until my sister came home the next morning. I was like 15 years old at the time, and that was the very first experience I've ever had with anything auditory. And it scared me shitless. And the third experience, the third story, is not really a story. It's just the feeling that followed playing with this Ouija board. I never felt alone in my room. I always felt like there was someone watching me from outside my window or standing in my closet. And I had to close the door, so the door was always closed, but every time I open it, I half expected to see someone there. That is how much I felt this presence in my house. And I am one to believe in divine timing because around the same time, my best friend started taking me to youth group. And which means I started praying out of habit. I wasn't praying out of fear because at this point of my life, things like that started becoming so normal that it didn't scare me anymore. Aside from those 2 things, hearing footsteps, seeing things out of the corner of my eye, those were normal things at that point because it had been happening for about a month. After I prayed or started praying, it happened, or it stopped happening after about a month. And nothing since then has happened in my home unprovoked the same ways as it did when Laura and I messed with the Ouija board. But that doesn't mean I don't have any badass ghost stories. I have experienced things since then. It's just nothing has been as prominent or as horrifying, in my opinion, other than when I got into a car accident. Other than that, nothing has been that scary or affected that many people in my life. And I am reading through a lot of your comments, if not all of them, and it amazes me not only the people who connect to my stories, but the crazy people who are like, you were so lucky that that happened to you. I tried summoning demons with my Ouija board and nothing happened, blah, blah, blah. And I just really want an experience like that. No, you don't. No, you don't. I cannot tell you enough. Just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean that stuff doesn't exist. Please, for your own safety, don't do that. Like, there is a reason why I said at the end of it, like, that is why I haven't touched it. That's why I haven't done it. And if I could take it back, I 110% would. So, that's the end of this video.
Sit down. I'm just kidding. You can stand. Was that a little bit scary? I woke up feeling a little bit sassy this morning. A little bit silly. Do you ever wake up and think, I'm gonna be a little bit of a problem today? It's kind of fun though. Anyway, that was the intro, I guess. Let's get into it. Samantha Walford, she was one of 3 children. She was the oldest, and she was only 19 years old when she found out news that would change her life. She was pregnant, but not only pregnant, she was pregnant with twins. It was a shock. It was unexpected. It definitely was not planned, but Samantha always had a motherly instinct about her, and she was really excited to become a mom. Even though she wasn't expecting it this soon, she was really excited about this new chapter in her life. The baby's father was her high school boyfriend, and he stuck around for 5 minutes, and then that relationship kind of fizzled out, leaving Samantha as a single mother. One of her favorite hobbies was social media, specifically YouTube. She loved making YouTube videos, and family members have said that she expected to quote unquote become famous. She had aspirations to become an influencer, I guess you could say. Most of her content was day-to-day content. She often spoke about her personal life as a young mom. In 2008, she would meet a guy at a tattoo shop who instantly caught her attention, Ernest Lee Ibarra Jr., who his friends and family referred to as Ernie. Ernie was from Texas, and he's been described as the kind of person that you could always count on. If you needed anything, Ernie was there, no matter what it was. He was selfless, he loved helping people, and he did so without ever expecting anything in return. He was also very smart. He was really good with computers. I believe he actually went on to go study technology at school because he was that good at it, but also very passionate about it. So Samantha and Ernie meet in 2008. They hit it off, and they get into a relationship right away. And Samantha and the twins eventually move in with Ernie, and they just become this happy little family of 4. Samantha started talking about Ernie a lot in her YouTube videos because she was the kind of person that was super open. She had no issues talking about her personal life with strangers. She shared basically anything and everything. Although for Ernie, putting his personal business out on the internet was not his favorite thing to do, which I can understand. He just wasn't the type that wanted his business out online, but Samantha was, and that was something that the two of them had a really hard time being aligned on. Ernie really stepped up as a father figure for the twins, and he was happy to. He saw so much potential in their little family, and he grew to love the twins as if they were his own. They started dating in 2008. In 2011, Samantha and Ernie found out that they were pregnant, and Samantha gave birth to another set of twins. Their little family of 4 quickly became a family of 6. And it goes without saying that kids are expensive. 1 kid is expensive, let alone 4, and growing from 4 to 6 people in the household, Samantha and Ernie had to figure out how they were going to financially support their family. Ernie was working multiple jobs. He spent more time out working than he did at home, and it got to a point where it was like, okay, he was doing what he could, but the kids were getting a little bit older. Samantha had more free time on her hands, and the conversation came up of Samantha now doing something like getting a job to help out financially. And that's when she decided to start taking social media a little bit more seriously, doing what she could to start monetizing from her YouTube channel, which was more than ideal for her because 1, she was very passionate about it and she liked to do it, and 2, she could do it from home. It was kind of the perfect job for her, and Ernie was supportive of it because he was supportive of Samantha, but his personal business being out on the internet was never going to be his favorite thing. He was never going to like it. It also felt like the more Samantha focused on growing her YouTube channel, the less she did with the kids and around the house. Anything that she did for views, it felt like. And that included what she did with the kids. It was more so, how can I record my kids and use it for entertainment to post on social media versus I actually care to spend quality time with my children. Social media became her priority, and she put that above the kids. She put that above taking care of the household, cleaning up, doing chores. All of that was kind of put on the back burner, but someone had to do it. So who did it? Ernie. He kind of had to do everything around the house on top of already working multiple jobs to try and make ends meet. Referring to Samantha, Ernie's sister has said, quote, she felt like this was going somewhere. She kind of started paying less attention to her kids and she acted like her so-called job was more important than that. She wanted to be internet famous. My brother didn't like that kind of thing, end quote. Ernie's thing though that he did like to do was gaming. He liked to play games online, but that was something that Samantha didn't like. So the two of them often argued about their hobbies. Neither of them liked what the other person did and the amount of time that they would dedicate to said hobbies, and it created a lot of tension between them. It got to a point where Ernie was exhausted, not only emotionally but also physically probably, and it became too much for him and he left. That didn't really last long, however, because he really did love his family. He saw Samantha wasn't really having much success online and noticed that that was taking a toll on her, so he moved back in to give it another go. He didn't want to give up on them quite yet. And then in 2013, at 24 years old, Samantha fell pregnant again, only with one kid this time, not twins, but their family was now a family of 7. Not long after that, Samantha and Ernie decided to get married. In the early hours of February 19th, 2025, Samantha's mother, Rosie, received a frantic phone call from Samantha. She sounded terrified on the phone. She's freaking out. She's telling her mom that in the middle of the night, 3 men broke into the house when they were sleeping. She says that they ripped her off the bed, tied her up. The men then started attacking Ernie and then they took him. They kidnapped him. He was gone. Rosie, on the phone listening to this, is terrified for her daughter, as any mother would be, and she called her sister Ginger, who lived nearby. Ginger rushed over to their house as fast as she could, and she found Samantha upstairs. She was with her hands tied behind her back and her feet were also tied. The kids, however, were still sound asleep in their bedrooms. Actually, they were all in one bedroom together, sleeping in the same room. Officers from the Titus County Sheriff's Department were called and they arrived shortly after. As authorities searched the home, they noticed that no valuables were taken, although Samantha said that it was a break-in, but it seemed like they didn't steal anything. They just bursted through the doors, took Ernie, and then left. Another weird thing, Samantha called her mother after everything, right? And she told her that she had been tied up. When Ginger arrived, Samantha was still tied up. Her hands were tied. So Ginger says, wait a minute, how did you manage to 1, get your phone and 2, dial your mom if your hands were tied up? And Samantha kind of dismisses the question, but then says she was able to dial the phone with her nose. Kind of weird. That's a little bit weird. Samantha was brought into the police station for questioning. She claimed that her and Ernie were asleep when the 3 men broke into the house, and she again told them the stories of the events of that night. She said that sometime after 1 a.m. she was startled by someone jerking the blankets off of her. She said one of the attackers had a weapon in hand, held it to her throat as the others were dragging Ernie downstairs and attacking him. Afterwards, she said they dragged her downstairs as well. This is a quote from her. It reads, quote, "They had me on my knees, forcing him to look at me. It was like they were using me like some kind of taunting factor, and they were punching him in the face with a..." Samantha said that Ernie was removed from the house as she was taken upstairs and bound, and after they were gone and she thought that she was saved, she wiggled over to her phone and called her mother with her nose. She claimed that the 3 men were wearing masks that covered their entire faces and baggy clothing. But investigators are thinking, the math isn't mathing, something isn't making sense here. The crime scene looked to be staged, if anything. There were also no signs of forced entry. Nothing was stolen. Samantha was somehow able to grab her phone and make the call when she was tied up. The kids were all still sound asleep despite the apparent chaos. And they were all sleeping in the same room, which was weird in itself. And then, as they're continuing to ask her questions, they ask her about the events of the day leading up to the attack, what she was doing, who she was with, where she was, just overall what she was up to that day. Samantha claimed that she was at a hospital visiting one of her friends who just had a baby. And then in the middle of the interview, Samantha pauses and she has an epiphany. She looks at investigators and says, there's this guy that I met yesterday at the hospital. His name is Johnny. He could have done this. Samantha claimed that she met him at the hospital when she was visiting her friend. Johnny was actually her friend's boyfriend, and Samantha said that he heard her talking about how Ernie didn't treat her well, and apparently that made Johnny very angry. So angry, in fact, that he offered to quote-unquote take care of Ernie for her to make sure that he didn't mistreat her again. This Jonathan guy apparently told Samantha that him and his brother-in-law, 26-year-old Jose, could take care of Ernie for her. Authorities learned more about this Johnny guy, realized that his name is actually Jonathan Kyle Sanford. They also learned that he had just recently been released from prison, so they go and arrest him immediately, and they're like, come in for questioning, dude, what happened? And Johnny, to their surprise, says, oh yeah, that was me. It was me with the help of my brother-in-law Jose and our friend 28-year-old Octavius. He helped us too. And authorities are like, okay, why? And Johnny says, oh, well, I did meet Samantha at the hospital and she was talking about how awful Ernie was to her, and I did offer to get him out of the picture, but Samantha wanted me to. She came up with this whole plan with us. She knew exactly what was going to happen and she helped us do it. Johnny tells investigators that originally they only intended to plant substances in Ernie's truck to then set him up to get caught so that he would go to prison and be out of the picture that way. But then on the night of February 19th, Johnny, Samantha, and Octavius and her children were also in the car. They were driving around together in Octavius's car to go and buy some substances, and while they were all hanging out together having a blast, at some point they decided that ending Ernie's life would maybe be easier. It just sounded like the better option to them because then he would be out of the picture forever. I think ending his life was the men's idea, but they told Samantha, if you want us to end it all, leave the front door unlocked the night of the crime so they could walk in and take Ernie. But if you don't want us to do that, lock the front door so then we know that all you want us to do is stay outside and plant the substances in his trunk. But it was kind of like, the ball is in your court. You leave that door unlocked and we will take it from there. And the night of the crime, Samantha left the front door unlocked. So the three men arrived. They saw the front door was unlocked. They went inside. They grabbed Ernie, took him to a remote area in a neighboring county where they attacked him further until they took the weapon and Jose fired it in the back of Ernie's head, ending his life. And that is what happened, and that is why the children were all sleeping in the same room together. So if need be, Samantha could control them and keep them all in one place so their plan didn't get messed up. To further minimize the chances of any of the 5 kids waking up, Samantha gave them some sort of her own medication that she was prescribed for her insomnia so they would not wake up. Oh, we also find out that Samantha did make the call to her mom while the men were still inside the house and before they tied her up to make everything look staged. Can you imagine? You let these 3 men inside your house to take your husband. They take your husband. They're getting ready to stage this break-in and to tie you up, and you say, hang on a minute, let me make a quick phone call. I'm just gonna call my mom, pretend that I need help, and then you can tie me up. Okay, great. So all of this is what Johnny is telling the police. This is their first time hearing this. Police asked Johnny if he can take them to Ernie's body to confirm that his story is true, and Jonathan does. He takes them to the exact location where Ernie's body was. They also found incriminating text messages between Octavius and Samantha, once again proving that Johnny was telling the truth. Jonathan, Jose, and Octavius are all arrested and charged with the murder of Ernie. Investigators go back to the interrogation room where Samantha is still being questioned, and they tell her everything that they just found out. They confront her. They say, we know you're a liar. We know exactly what happened. We know that you were not only aware, but also involved. It's time to quit your little lying game and come clean. And Samantha gets super defensive and says, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know anything. I didn't do anything. She couldn't confess, but ultimately she was also arrested and charged with murder. Samantha Walford went to trial for the murder her husband Ernie Ibarra in September of 2017. She pled not guilty, but she was found guilty and received a 99-year prison sentence to be served consecutively with a 50-year sentence for kidnapping. Jonathan and Jose pled guilty in April of 2016, and they were each sentenced to 50 years in prison. Octavius pled not guilty, so he went to trial and was found guilty on all counts, receiving a combined 93 prison sentence. The million-dollar question, what was the motive? Well, a lot of people think that Samantha was doing this for attention, that she wanted something tragic to happen in her life to get sympathy from the public and in result become the famous person that she wanted to be on social media. What a plan, my girl, what a plan. Let me just end the life of my husband, traumatize my children so that I could get a big following. Anyway, that is all I have for today's video. I've been getting a lot of Instagram requests from you guys to do cases, and I was reading through them last night. There are so many intriguing cases in there that I'm definitely going to put on my list to research and cover. But yeah, that's all from me. Thank you guys for spending time with me today. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.